Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Western Canon Challenge, where we are reading the entirety of the Western Literary Canon out loud. Today we are beginning journal collection number 30, dating from the year 1839, when Emerson would turn 36 years old in May of that year. This particular journal collection starts with a couple short little quotations and then a editorial sort of biographical update on what's happening in Emerson's life at the time. Then from there, I will proceed to the first journal entry, which is actually from January 1st of 1839. So with that said, I'll read the quotations and then get right into it. For virtue's whole sum is to know and dare. John Donne. Still lives the song, though Regnar dies, fill high the cups again. Sterling. The course of lectures on human life, begun in December 1838, lasted until the latter part of February. It was interfered with by the sleeplessness of which Mr. Emerson speaks, and later by weakening colds. These made the course seem unsatisfactory to him, and he told his audience that he had meant to round out the series by two more lectures, one on the limitations of human activity by the laws of the world, and one on the intrinsic powers and resources of our nature. Yet Mr. Alcott, on returning from the sixth lecture, the protest, wrote in his journal, Emerson has triumphed. The large hall in the Temple was filled, and the audience the choicest that could be gathered in New England. Of the closing lecture he wrote, the peroration was grand. He dwelt for a moment on the spirit in which his word had been conceived and uttered, on the inscrutability of the soul, its marvelous fact, the feeble insight which he had been suffered to get of it. The audience was larger than on any former evening. January 1st, 1839. Adjourned the promised lecture on genius until Wednesday week, on account of my unaccountable vigils now for 4 or 5 nights, which destroy all power of concentration by day. Sunday, January 6th. It seemed to me at church today that the communion service, as it is now and here celebrated, is a document of the dullness of the race. Then presently, when I thought of the divine soul of my Nazarene, whose name is used here, and considered how these my good neighbors, the bending deacons with their cups and plates, would have straightened themselves to sturdiness, if the proposition came before them to honor thus a known fellow man, I was constrained to feel the force of genius that, hallowing once those Hebrew lips, should propagate its influences thus far, and not be quite utterly lost in the ultimate shoals and shores of our conquered congregation. January 12th. Set your own rate. Let us call Goose Pond the drop, or God's pond. Henry Thoreau says, no, that will shock the people. Call it Satan's pond, and they will like it, or still better, Tom Wyman's pond. Alas, say I, for the personality that eats it up. Seekest thou great things? Seek them not. Jeremiah 14:5. February 3rd. Returned last night from Plymouth, where on Thursday evening, 31st January, I read a lecture on genius. On Friday afternoon, one on Home, and in the evening, one on being and seeming. February 7th. The drunkard retires on a keg and locks himself up for 3 days' debauch. When I am sick, I please myself not less in retiring on a salamander stove, heaping the chamber with fuel, and inundating lungs, liver, head, and feet with floods of caloric heats on heats. It is dainty to be sick, if you have leisure and convenience for it. How bland the aspect of all things! One sees the colors of the carpet and the paper hangings. All the housemates have a softer, fainter look to the debilitated retina. Yesterday I saw pencil sketches done by Stuart Newton whilst confined in the insane asylum a little before his death. They seem to betray the richest invention, so rich as almost to say, why draw any lines since you can draw all? Genius has given you the freedom of the universe. Why then come within any walls? Written to James Freeman Clarke. As soon as you once come up against a man's limitations, it is all over with him. Public speaking, not realism. We see it advertised that Mr. A will deliver an oration on the 4th of July. As soon as the child has left the room, his strewn toys become affecting. Falling. Quote, "It is as easy as falling." In nature, nothing is done but in the cheapest way. When the fruit is ripe, it falls. When the fruit is dispatched, the leaf falls. The circuit of the waters is mere falling. The walking of man and all animals is a falling forward. All our manual labor and works of strength, as prying, splitting, digging, rowing, etc., are done by dint of continual falling. And the globe and the globes, earth, moon, sun, comet, star, fall forever and ever. Nature works by short ways. February 8th. Memory is the deaf man's hearing and the blind man's sight. Plutarch's Morals, Volume 4, page 47. February 14th. Demonology seems to me to be the intensation of the individual nature, the extension of this beyond its due bounds and into the domain of the infinite and universal. The faith in a genius, in a family destiny, in a ghost, in an amulet is the projection of that instinctive care which the individual takes of his individuality beyond what is meet and into the region where the individuality is forever bounded by generic, cosmic, and universal laws. Yet I find traces of this usurpation in very high places, in Christianity, for example. Christianity, as it figures now in the history of ages, intrudes the element of a limited personality into the high place which nothing but spiritual energy can fill, representing that Jesus can come in where a will is an intrusion into growth, repentance, reformation. The divine will, or the eternal tendency to the good of the whole, active in every atom, every moment, is the only will that can be supposed predominant a single hairbreadth beyond the lines of individual action and influence, as known to the experience, but a ghost, a Jupiter, a fairy, a devil, and not less a saint, an angel, and the God of the popular religion, as of Calvinism and Romanism, is an aggrandized and monstrous individual will. The divine will, such as I describe it, is spiritual. These other things, though called spiritual, are not so, but only demonological and fictions. February 15th. Walking. In the morning, a man walks with his whole body, in the evening, only with his legs. The trunk is carried along almost motionless. What fine traits Plutarch gives Epaminondas in his essay on the demon of Socrates, representing him as taking no part in a bold attempt upon Archaeus in the tyrants because his nature was averse to it, and, "He loves to be silent," said his father. "He is very cautious how he proposeth anything, but will hear eternally, and is never weary of an instructive story." Ellen was never alone. I could not imagine her poor and solitary. She was like a tree in flower, so much soft, budding, and forming beauty was society for itself, and she taught the eye that beheld her why beauty was ever painted with loves and graces attending her steps. February 22nd. I closed on Wednesday evening, 21st February, my course of lectures at the Masonic Temple in Boston on human life. The pathetic lies usually not in miseries, but petty losses and disappointments, as when the poor family have spent their little utmost upon a wedding or a christening festival, and their feast is dishonored by some insult or petty disaster, the falling of the salver or the spoiling of a carpet. When I was a boy, I was sent by my mother with a dollar bill to buy me a pair of shoes at Mr. Baxter's shop, and I lost the bill, and remember being sent out by my disappointed mother to look among the fallen leaves under the poplar trees opposite the house for the lost banknote. My ambition. When I was in college, Robert Barnwell, the first scholar in my class, put his hand on the back of my head to feel for the bump of ambition and pronounced that it was very, very small. Would you know if the man is just? Ask of the tax gatherer. Bambino. Where's the cover that lives in this box? Asks little Waldo. When he saw the dead bird, he said, He was gone bye-bye. Then he said, He was broke. When Dr. Jackson smoked a cigar, Waldo said, I see the cobwebs go up out of the gentleman's mouth. February 25th. Yesterday morning, 24th February at 8 o'clock, a daughter was born to me. A soft, quiet, swarthy little creature, apparently perfect and healthy. My sacred child, blessings on thy head, little winter bud. And comest thou to try thy luck in this world, and know if the things of God are things for thee? Well assured, and very soft and still, the little maiden expresses great contentment with all she finds in her delicate but fixed determination to stay where she is, and grow. So be it, my fair child. Lydian, who magnanimously makes my gods her gods, calls the babe Ellen. I can hardly ask more for thee, my babe, than that name implies. Be that vision, and remain with us and after us. March 3rd. The memory plays a great part in settling the intellectual rank of men. A seneschool of Parnassus is Menocene. Thus, am I a better scholar than one of my neighbors who visited me? I see how it is. We read the same books a year, 2 years, 10 years ago. We read the same books this month. Well, that fact which struck us both then with equal force I still contemplate. He has lost it. He and the world have only this fact. I have that and this. A fine voice in a choir seems to inundate the house with spouts of jets and streams of sound, and to float, the old hulk of the choir itself, insinuating itself under all the droning groans and shrill screams, and hurrying them away the spoils of its own stream. Editor's Note. On March 5th, the symposium met at Mr. Morse's, the subject of the evening being Wonder and Worship. The next day, Mr. Emerson gave a discourse, Intellectual Integrity, before the Mechanics' Apprentices Association. Again, on March 11th, the symposium gathered at Mr. Morse's and conversed on Innocence and Guilt. Vanity. We all wish to be of importance in one way or another. The child coughs with might and main, since it has no other claims on the company. No age in talk. I make no allowance for youth in talking with my friends. If a youth or maiden converses with me, I forget they are not as old as I am. Young love. The rude village boy teases the young girls about the schoolhouse door. Mountain heads. Brant's head in Stone's Life of Brant reminded me instantly of a mountain head, and the furrows of the brow suggest the strata of the summit. Gladly I perceive this fine resemblance, for we like to reconcile man and the world in all ways. Then I went to Boston and saw Alston's Sisters at Alexander's Room. There again were human forms more related to the lights of morning and evening than to human society as we know it. Gentleman. When I consider how much it is to be a gentleman, how deep the elements of the gentleman lie in nature, I doubt if I should find anywhere among the privileged classes, in the select even of these, anyone who would not in some point of behavior suggest vulgarity and imperfect breeding. Non è nel mondo se non volgo. Note from the editor. On the last day of January and the 1st of February, Mr. Emerson, by invitation, gave 3 lectures at Plymouth, Genius, Home, and Being and Seeming. In February, his friend James Freeman Clarke, then a young minister in Louisville, Kentucky, asked for some verses for his newspaper, The Western Messenger, and Mr. Emerson sent him Goodbye, written in 1823, and Each and All, founded on a boyish experience, recorded in the journal May 16, 1834, and turned into verse later. March 9th. The Indo-American War of Brant and Gansevoort, etc., illustrate as well as any other the uninventive and inventive. All sit still in the fort, persuaded that the militia cannot meet the British regulars and the dreadful Indians. At last comes a restless creative man, some General Herkimer or Captain Willett, and makes a sally to the woods to a distant fort, engages the Indians, beats them, and shows the stupidity of the former sitting. Instantly they conquer who will believe they can. God advance, God advances. The world, the flesh, and the devil sit and rot. Not less is all society an optical illusion to the young adventurer. Stay at home in God, and the whole population will do homage with cap and knee. General Gates behaved with great delicacy to General Burgoyne when he capitulated in 1777 at Saratoga. Burgoyne mentions in a letter to the Earl of Derby that when the British soldiers had marched out of their camp to the place where they were to pile their arms, not a man of the American troops was to be seen. See Stone's Life of Brant. Books. Quote, "What's Hecuba to him?" End quote. Byron says of Jack Bunting, "He knew not what to say, and so he swore." I may say it out of preposterous use of books. He knew not what to do, and so he read. March 10th. I charge the Church with a want of respect to the soul of the worshipper. The question every worshipper should ask of the preacher is, "What is that to me? What have I to do with thee? What with thy fact? What with thy history, thy person, thine alleged inclinations and aversions? I am here, behold thy tribunal. Come with thy persons and facts to judgment." And the Church, the preacher should say, "Soul of my brother, methinks I have glad tidings for thee. Methinks I have found something of thine spoken by one Jesus, by one Zoroaster, by one Pen. Hear and judge. But now we are a mob. Man does not stand in awe of man." I suppose that my desire to retain a church visible grows out of the present state of society, and that in a right state every meeting for practical, intellectual, or civic purposes would be predominated by the sentiment of holiness, and would yield the precise satisfactions I have in view when I ask more Sabbath than the eternal Sabbath of action. Vanity. Do not be so troublesome modest, you vain fellow. Real modesty still puts the thing forward and postpones the persons, nor worries me with endless apologies. Quote unquote, "Another state." I am weary of hearing at church of another state. When shall I hear the prophet of the present state? Also, the preacher admonishes his man not to bring a dishonor on religion by his misconduct. Why not ask him not to shut his eyes for fear of putting out the sunshine? Isolation must precede society. I like the silent church before the service begins better than any preaching. At church in the afternoon, I doubted whether that dislocation, disunion, reflex life, second thought that mars all our simplicity be not an universal disease, and whether all literary pictures of Nathan the Wise, or whatever calm, placid philosopher, be not false and overcharged. Albeit I thought it best to seek one peace by fidelity, and at least I would write my procrastinated letters. Then again it seemed wise to sit at home contented with my work and word, and ever rove into other men's acres more. Why this needless visiting? If you can really serve them, they will visit you. One thing more. It is not by running after Napoleon that the corresponding element, the Napoleonism in you, is stimulated and matured, but by withdrawing from him, from all, back on the deeps of home. All history is in us. March 13th. Conversation. The office of conversation is to give me self-possession. I lie torpid as a clod. Virtue, wisdom, sound to me fabulous. All cant. I am an unbeliever. Then comes by a safe and gentle spirit, who spreads out in order before me his own good life and aims, not as experience, but as the good and desirable. Straightway I feel the presence of a new, yet old, a genial, a native element. I am like a southerner, who, having spent the winter in a polar climate, feels at last the south wind blow, the rigid fibers relax, and his whole frame expands to the welcome heats. In this bland, flowing atmosphere, I regain one by one my faculties, my organs. Life returns to a finger, a hand, a foot. A new nimbleness, almost wings, unfold at my side, and I see my right to the heavens as well as to the farthest fields of the earth. The effect of the conversation resembles the effect of a beautiful voice in a church choir, as I have noted it above, which insinuates itself as water into all chinks and cracks, and presently floats the whole discordant choir and holds it in solution in its melody. Well, I too am a ship aground, and the bard directs a river to my shoals, relieves me of these perilous rubs and strains, and at last fairly uplifts me on the waters, and I put forth my sails and turn my head to the sea. Alcott is the only majestic converser I now meet. He gives me leave to be, more than all others. Alcott is so apprehensive that he does not need to be learned. Institutions are optical illusions. All concentrates, let us not rove. A few sounds, a few sights suffice and outvalue a multitude. Kings make their own scale, and new write the tariff of prices. Let us mind our business with a great heart, and never vex ourselves with institutions or consequences. The great man knew not that he was great. Painting seems to be the eye what dancing is to the body. March 19th. Such is my confidence in the compensations of nature that I no longer wish to find silver dollars in the road, nor to have the best of the bargain in my dealings with people, nor that my property should be increased, knowing that all such gains are apparent and not real, for they pay the sure tax. But the perception that it is not desirable to find the dollar I enjoy without any alloy. This is an abiding good. This is so much accession of Godhead. Popularity is for dolls. A hero cannot be popular. I meet men whose faces instantly assure me they are where I left them. No new thoughts, new books, new facts, but facts old and decrepit by the inaction of the soul. Others I know, who are new men in new regions, with faint memory of their own words and deeds on past occasions. Quote, "It is in bad taste," is the most formidable word an Englishman can pronounce. Peepers and listeners. There is other peeping besides setting the eye to chinks and keyholes. Reading Goethe's letters or the history of the Saracens, for example. March 23rd. Art. Each work of art excludes the world, concentrates attention on itself. For the time it is the only thing worth doing to do just that. Be it a sonnet, a statue, a landscape, an outline head of Caesar, or an oration. A man must consider what a rich realm he abdicates when he becomes a conformist. March 26th. A good man is contented. I love and honor Epimenides, but I do not wish to be Epimenides. We are always ducking with our unseasonable apologies. Shall the priest or priestess on the tripod, full of the god, balk the inquirer with nonsense of modesty? To him who said it before. I see my thoughts standing, growing, walking, working out there in nature. Look where I will, I see it. Yet when I seek to say it, all men say, quote, "No, it is not. These are whimsies and dreams." Then I think they look at one thing and I at others. My thoughts, though not false, are far, as yet, from simple truth, and I am rebuked by their disapprobation, nor think of questioning it. Society is yet too great for me, but I go back to my library and open my books, and lo, I read this word spoken out of immemorial time, quote, "God is the unity of men." Behold, I say my very thought. This is what I am rebuked for saying, and here it is, and has been for centuries in this book which circulates among men without reproof, nay, with honor. But behold again here in another book, Man is good, but men are bad, why I have said no more. And here again read these words, Ne te quaesiveris extra, What then? I have not been talking nonsense. These lines of Greek and Latin, which pass now current in all literatures as proverbs of old wise men, are expressions of the very facts which the sky, the sea, the plant, the ox, the man, the picture, said daily unto me, and which I repeated to you. I see that I was right, that not only I was right, which I could not doubt, but my language was right, that the soul has always said these things, and that you ought to hear it and say the same. And thou, good ancient brother, who to ancient nations, to earlier modes of life and politics and religion, didst utter this my perception of today, I greet thee with reverence, and give thee joy of that which thou so long hast held, and which today, a perfect blessing, one and indivisible, yields itself to me also, yields itself all to me, without making the possession less. The perception of identity is a good mercury of the progress of the mind. I talk with very accomplished persons who betray instantly that they are strangers in nature. The cloud, the tree, the sod, the cat, are not theirs, have nothing of them. They are visitors in the world, and all the proceedings and events are alien, immeasurable, and across a great gulf. The poet, the true naturalist, for example, domesticates himself in nature with a sense of strict consanguinity. His own blood is in the rose and the apple tree. The cause of him is cause of all. The volcano has its analogies in him. He is in the chain of magnetic, electric, geologic, meteorologic phenomena, and so he comes to live in nature and extend his being through all. Then is true science. April 6th. I have regard to appearance still, so am I no hero. Do what you are doing with a single mind and utter disregard of eyes, and then what you have done before will justify you now. Cousins. Would it not dissipate the maiden's romance if she foresaw in the hour of wedding the arrival of young cousins 3-4 years hence at her door, without any work in their hands or word in their mouths, dropped out of the stagecoach like eggs not yet alive to spend a fortnight? Quote, the learning to write and to read was better than the Latin lessons and poetry, whereby I was constrained to lay up the follies of I know not what Aeneas, whilst I forgot mine own, and to bewail Dido, dead because she killed herself for love, whilst in the meantime I, most miserable creature, did endure myself with dry eyes to depart and die from thee, O my God and my life. St. Augustine's Confessions, Book 1, Chapter 13. See what I have written above. April 7th. Popular Christianity is far below, in its tone of teaching, the poorest moral philosophy that has been originally taught. The pulpit concedes that judgment is not executed in this world, that the wicked are successful, that the good are miserable. That is to say, these last are to have their full swing of wine and peaches another day. You sin now, we shall sin by and by, or we would sin now if we could, not being successful, we expect our revenge tomorrow. Of course, such teaching degrades the disciple. Can they wonder that every pure, generous, and intelligent man and woman rejects that they call their gospel? Every pure mind has always rejected the popular estimate of men and things and made its own. It has not called bread happiness. It has said, I am in heaven when I am true. Poor wanderers comfort, flatter each other that you are happy because you have flocks and herds, gardens and cellars, piles of wood and piles of coin. You are not happy. I know it. You know it in my presence. All literature, all grandeur of spirit testifies for me, if testimony I needed, that I needed none. I affirm I am the fact, and you need none. Confront us, and you confess. The teaching that shows this would be spiritual, the teaching that shows the omnipotence of the will, that heaven proceeds forever from me outward to all things, and not to me from coffee and custard. The teaching that concedes success to sensual good, the teaching of Calvinistic and Unitarian pulpits, is carnal. An opium pill does not teach the doctrine of the soul, but the preponderance of structure. In the Prince of Rogers' Italy, I am struck in certain figures which are handsome and unblameable, with a quite conventional character. They are not original. Every outline, however coarse, from the Phidian marbles, and every drawing in that book of Salvator Rosa's, is as original as a man and strong as a tree or a stone. But these pretty English pictures look thin and superficial. Whatever we traveled to see was domestic and not the product of traveling, as the pyramids, the Parthenon, its marbles, Raphael's and Michelangelo's pictures, Venice, and the residence of Dante, Shakespeare, Burns. We shall never find God out there in the world. Always he abides fast at home. Short note from the editor. It appears from the letter to Carlyle that, in April, Mr. Emerson began to put his papers together in preparation for his first book of essays. April 9th. Housekeeping. Unroof any house, and you must find there confusion. Order is too precious and divine a thing to dwell with such fools and sinners as we all are. Incredible is it to me that in any family the work can be dispatched from Monday to Monday again, all the year round, with sense and system. Then, if the house is well kept, are the relations of the keepers, the men and women and children, well and reservedly observed, or are persons made of things? On the whole, I am sure there is no house well kept. There go too many things to it. April 11th. Quote, "The large utterance of the early gods." Unquote. It is the best part of each writer which has nothing private in it. That is the best part of each which he does not know, which flowed out of his constitution. Quote, "The large utterance of the early gods." Unquote. I believe not only in omnipotence but in eternity. And these are not words, but things. I believe in the omnipresence, that is, the all is in each particle, that entire nature reappears in every leaf and moss. I believe in eternity, that is, I can find Greece and Palestine and Italy and England and the islands, the genius and creative principle of each and of all eras in my own mind. The primeval world, the foreworld as the Germans say, I can dive to it in myself, as well as grope for it with researching fingers in catacombs, libraries, and the broken reliefs and torsos of ruined villas. There is, at this moment, there is for me an utterance undoubtedly bare and grand as that of the colossal chisel of Phidias, or trowel of the Egyptians, or pen of Moses, or Dante, but different from all these. Not possibly will the soul deign to repeat itself, but if I can hear what these patriarchs say, surely I can reply to them on the same pitch of voice. Dwell up there in the simple and noble regions of thy life, act thy heart, and skulk no longer, nor respect thy fears, and thou shalt reproduce the foreworld again. Realism. Of Fletcher, William Cartwright writes, "Where in a worthy scorn he dares refuse all other gods, and makes the thing his muse." Fletcher, whose wit was not an accident to the soul, but it, only diffused, thus we the same sun call moving, I the sphere, and shining on a wall. Edward Powell. Nor were the plays the lotteries of wit, but like the Durer's pencil, which first knew the laws of faces, and then faces drew. William Cartwright. Fletcher's Bonduca is a play whose tune goes manly. Let the professors and reviewers who prate of strong Saxon speech read this, and write so. It is short of Shakespeare's dire style, as in Hamlet's dialogue with his mother, but only of that. Cataract is right great, especially in the first scene, and the hard knocks which Junius and Petilius give each other recruit the ear and heart. These men are not mush. Then I read The Coxcombs, a play which is a just encomium of woman. The situations and sentiments of Viola are genuinely pathetic and true, and the true nature of woman in her, when she asks Valerio, "Pray, what is love?" for I am full of that I do not know, contrasts with that violated nature which Valerio considers when he says, "Thy thoughts would be like a thrice married widow full of ends." In Bondica, Cataract, showing the impossibility of peace, paints the Romans out of Tacitus. And with those swords that know no end of battle, those men beside themselves allow no neighbor, those minds that where the day is claim inheritance, and where the sun make ripe the fruits their harvest, and where they march but measure out more ground to add to Rome, and here in the bowels on us it must not be. April 14th. Yesterday I read Beaumont and Fletcher's tragedy, The False One, which, instead of taking its name from Septimius, ought to have been Cleopatra. A singular fortune is that of the man Caesar to have given name, as he has, to all that is heroic ambition in the imaginations of painters and poets. Caesar must still be the speaking trumpet through which this large, wild, commanding spirit must always be poured. The poet would be a great man. His power is intellectual. Instantly he seizes these hollow puppets of Caesar, of Tamerlane, of Boadicea, of Belisarius, and inflates them with his own vital air. If he can verily ascend to grandeur, if his soul is grand, behold his puppets attest his might. They are no more puppets, but instant vehicles of the wine of God. They shine and overflow with the streams of that universal energy that beamed from Caesar's eye, poised itself in Hector's spear, pure sat with Epaminondas, and Socrates, purest with thee, thou holy child of Jesus. The poet has used these names and conventions as he would use a flute or a pencil to convey his sense. He does not therefore defer to the nature of these accidental men, these stock heroes. The great names cannot stead him, if he have not life himself. Let a man believe in God, and not in names and places and persons. We are the photometers, we the irritable gold leaf and tinfoil that measures the accumulations of the subtle element. We know the authentic effects of the true fire through every one of its million disguises. Does it raise and astonish the spirits? Does it soar above all custom and use, and work new in every stroke, yet quietly and lawfully as rosebuds open, and constrain thee to great in its newest and strangest works, a friendly and domestic power, kind to thee as was always thy mother's milk? Then we know the sign of God. Always it stays at home, never is gadding. Isolation you must have, but it must not be mechanical, but spiritual, that is, elevation. The whole world seems to be in the conspiracy to evade you, to vanquish you with emphatic details, to break you into crumbs, to fritter your time. Friend, wife, child, mother, fear, want, charity, all knock at the student's door at the critical moment, ring larums in his ear, scare away the muse, and spoil the poem. Do not spill thy soul, do not all descend, but keep thy state. Stay at home in thine own heaven, and let fingers do the fingers' work. Unite and break not good. Music Masses. The philosopher has a good deal of knowledge which cannot be abstractly imparted, which needs the combinations and complexity of social action to paint it out, as many emotions in the soul of Handel and Mozart are thousand-voiced and utterly incapable of being told in a simpler air on a lute, but must ride on the mingling whirlwinds and rivers and storms of sound of the great orchestra, of organ, pipe, sackbut, dulcimer, and all kinds of music. As the musician avails himself of the concert, so the philosopher avails himself of the drama, the epic, the novel, and becomes a poet. For these complex forms allow of the utterance of his knowledge of life by indirections, as well as in the didactic way, and can therefore express the fluxional quantities and values which the thesis or dissertation could never give. There is the courage of the cabinet as of the field. There is the courage of painting and of poetry, as well as of siege and stake. April 15th. My books are my picture gallery. Every man has his fine recreations and elegancies allowed him by the liberal God, as well as his chores. These noble English poems, so rich, so sincere, so colored in the grain, proceeding out of a depth of nature, answering to the good Saxon heart in us, these are the Pitti Palace and Vatican of me and my friends. Why should I grudge the Grand Duke of Tuscany his gallery? The citizen of old Thebes needed not inquire after young artists of Athens or Ionia as he stood in his gigantic palaces in the shadow of a sphinx. The Hindu at Elephanta dwelt also with his own national ornaments. To each his own the liberal God supplies. Only accept your own. Drink deep of this enjoyment. Know your books and brilliant souls that soared and sang, yet kept their own law, and so tell of great nature to you. Your native, proper muses, your own cousins in college, they are the wild flowers that fringe your sod, but go sometimes of a morning or evening into this garden of delight. Artificial memory value of a catalogue. The simple knot of now and then will give an immeasurable value to any sort of catalogue or journal kept with common sense for a year or two. See in the merchant's counting room, for his peddling of cotton and indigo, the value that comes to be attached to any blotting book or ledger. And if your aims and deeds are superior, how can any record of yours, suppose of the books you wish to read, of the pictures you would see, of the facts you would scrutinize, any record that you are genuinely moved to begin and continue, not have a value proportionately superior? It converts the heights you have reached into tableland. That book or literary fact which had the whole emphasis of attention a month ago stands here along with one which was as important in preceding months, and with that of yesterday, and next month there will be another. Here they all occupy but 4 lines, and I cannot read these together without juster views of each than when I read them singly. To know one you must know all. Nature hates finites and cripples. It is of no use to say, because the world is represented in each particle, as in a moss or an apple. Come, I will dedicate myself to the study of botany in one thing. I will explore the dandelions. A dandelion shall be my meat and drink, house and home, and through that alone will I achieve nature. It is all in vain, for the way nature tells her secrets is by exposing one function in one flower and another function in a different plant. If the spiral vessels are seen in bulbs, the vesicles are seen in other stomata, in other pila, in another, and chromule in a fifth. And to show all the parts of the one plant, she leads you all round the garden. Self-reliance. Ask nothing of men, and in the endless mutation thou only firm column must presently appear on a throne, the king of all men. April 17th. Am I a hypocrite who am disgusted by vanity everywhere and preach self-trust every day? We give you leave to prefer your work to the whole world, so long as you remain in it. But when, uninvited, you come to visit me, what was the praise of God sounds in my ear like self-praise. I will assume that a stranger is judicious and benevolent. If he is, I will thereby keep him so. If he is not, it will tend to instruct him. The author appeals to the judicious reader, but if he has prevailed so far with any reader that he is influenced with a desire to behold and converse with his master, the author is shy, suspicious, and disdainful. Let him go into his closet and pray the divinity to make him so great as to be good-natured. Philosophy teaches how to be personal without being unparliamentary. In life it is a great matter to live with the people you are used to. Go where there is real affinity and the highest relations for you, and it serves very well for the short time that thought and poetry flow. But as soon as the tea tray comes in, we feel the yoke of foreigners and wish we were at home with our stupid familiars. This is the end of Journal Collection number 30 by Ralph Waldo Emerson, dating from the year 1839, when the author was 36 years old. In our next video, we will pick up where we left off in the spring of that year with the entry for April 21st. Thank you for listening.